Everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. Looking forward to talking with Leigh Marz. Leigh, it's great to connect with you, and I'm looking forward to talking with you about your book, Golden: The Power of Silence in a World of Noise. Let's dive right in because, studies show that attention spans are less than a goldfish, less than 7 seconds. There was an article in The Atlantic in 2008 that said that it was called "Is Google Making Us Stupid?" Talking about how the technology and things of that nature, not just Google, but in everything, is moving us from a delayed gratification mindset to an instant gratification mindset. We have social media, all the apps, right? We thought it would be amazing to have everything on our phones, and it is, but it creates a lot of noise and a lot of distraction. The journey to peace as a business coach, the way I see it in many cases, is stillness and silence, and finding a space where you can be silent. So I loved when your booking group reached out to me. I loved the title of your book, and I was looking forward to diving in. So let's start. Do we start with the word golden? Do we start with the power of silence, or do we start with a world of noise? I'll let you take the lead.
I'm afraid we start with a world of noise because that really is what brought us to write this book. You hit on a lot of things that were really what was happening for Justin and I, and my co-author, Justin Zorn. We were feeling inundated by all the things you described, but we needed to break it apart. So we did in the book, we break it apart: auditory noise. So the world is actually getting louder. It feels that way. A lot of people say that, but we demonstrate how the world is louder. A quick description of that is that emergency sirens are 6 times louder than they were 100 years ago because they need to get through the urban din in order to get our attention. It's an important part, but it needs to be 6 times louder to do that. So that tells us, oh yeah, this environment is much louder, and there's a lot of warnings about that for our health and our mental clarity. But you hit on a lot of the informational noise that we also needed to tackle because we are in a situation that we've never been in before, where our attentional networks are being demanded upon or really preyed upon day in, day out. So it's not just what we want to put our attention to, all the amount of information out there, which of varying degrees of worth, but things grabbing for our attention more and more mercilessly. So as you hit upon, and then we look at what that does to our internal sense of quiet and noise. Yeah. So it's auditory, informational, and internal. And we look in this book at the many different ways to find our way through that. And then the benefits of finding that silence with external silence and internal silence, especially to do the work we want to do in the world, to focus on the things that matter most and to strategize and to not get caught up in all of the noise.
Yeah. So let's dive into that. Let's work backwards: auditory, informational, and internal. I'm 50. I've been meditating for about 25 years, and let's start talking about the internal silence. How do we do it, but what's some exercises that you suggest? And I know, Justin can't be here, but I know one of the things he's done, as I read in the bio, is taught meditation classes at the U.S. Congress. So, and so I know meditation and silence is a big piece. So what are some things that you both suggest?
Well, Justin and I confess in the book that we both had big periods of practicing meditation, but this is really a non-meditator's guide to getting beyond the noise. So if meditation is your thing, which it is for you, Jon, which is awesome, it can be a great way to distinguish or to discern the signal, that which needs your attention, from the noise, right? And to quiet the mind, right? And just to observe all that. But there's so many routes actually to find internal quiet. And many of your listeners will recognize these. What we started to look at are flow states, for example, are an amazing way to bring our attention into focus on something in particular, something we love. Hopefully, maybe it's skiing or rafting or dancing or who knows what, or micro flow states like doodling or reading. So those things can bring quiet to the internal soundscape and really get us in right it can kind of right size us with what's going on. We can get a little bit smaller in that process, but also feel more connected, maybe to the nature that we're in or to other people who are doing the activity we're doing. So there's a way in which that quiets the mind. So flow states, moments of awe, just taking in a beautiful view or watching your children play or just having those kind of joyful moments also can be quietening. Mystical experiences, which are harder to track and trace and measure, but we did talk to neuroscientists, and there's a lot of commonalities in what's happening in the brain when we find ourselves in these quiet internal states, and a lot of wisdom from the people we spoke with about what benefits that can help, kind of cut through again all the noise and really help clarify what we're here to do.
Yeah, I love that. Let's move to informational noise. There seems to be so much information. It's really hard to even sit in front of your computer without a lot of, pop-ups and texts. I know I have a 17 and 20-year-old. They're on so many different chat groups that they're in. It's how do you slow that down? And specifically for the millennial and the Gen Z generation, I don't know how that slows down, right? Because in an hour you can miss out on so much dialogue. So
Yeah.
how do you talk about that? What was your study? What did your study show?
Well, just to say that, again, does it feel, it feels like there's more going on, and there is, and it feels like there's a sort of a juggernaut, bottleneck, and there is. So Americans take in 5 times the more information than we ever have, even just a generation ago, 5 times more information. And the past CEO of Google estimates that every 2 days we generate as much information as we did from the dawn of civilization to 2003. So with that mass proliferation of information and things, again, out there, but also grabbing for our attention, we are inundated. Now, our attentional networks are fixed. They don't grow exponentially with this exponential amount of information. So Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, the great American-Hungarian psychologist, estimates that we can take in, with 11 million bits of information coming into our sensory channels, we can take in about 126 bits per second. 11 million, 120. So there's a myth, a delusion here about us being able to take in more. And I also have a 17-year-old who is also on infinite numbers of platforms. And really, I just ask for any of us, because us parents can be just as guilty, to just really notice the quality of our attention. What's the quality, and where we pay our attention, it really matters. So if it is all fractured, if we're kind of dealing in a state of continuous partial attention, which is something Linda Stone coined 20-some years ago, citing this problem, then we are feeling fractured, and we are fractured. And then the difference in actually receiving someone's pristine attention is radically different. So just to really notice, bring awareness to the difference there and the costs of those things, and to not buy into the delusion that we can actually just jam more and more into this, because the quality of that attention isn't there. Yeah.
And so you talk about, auditory information, but where does visual fit in?
We don't tackle that only because Marie Kondo did such a great job. I mean, there's so much good work around visual, but I am very impacted by that too. So I would like to clear a space to help with that focus. Really, anything grabbing your attention, you just to shift it from being reactive to the auditory, informational, and internal world to really directing that attention where we want it to go is a huge shift right now. And that's kind of where we're encouraging people to notice the noise in their lives, auditory, informational, internal, and to appreciate silence, those moments of silence where we find quiet in our day, no matter how bizarre. Like it could be those flow states, it could be something not quiet auditorily, but it brings quiet internally.
Yeah.
So to really study that.
Yeah. Let's talk about, where to direct it and where we want it to go as a CEO of a company, whether it is a solopreneur, a medium-sized company, a fortune company. What do you do with this type of information to change the way you lead your company through the next decade?
We actually bring in this ancient Japanese principle called Ma, M-A. And the kanji character is this temple gate with slats through it and golden light pouring through. So the synonym silence and emptiness and nothingness, one of our favorite synonyms for that word or that concept of Ma is pure potentiality. So we put to the reader, what if we were to bring Ma into the job? So this principle of Ma, it shows up in scroll paintings where the swoosh of calligraphy is the feature, but it's the empty space around it is equally as important. In Japanese architecture as well, you'll see this empty space, real thought to presence and spaciousness. In ikebana flower arrangement, the branches and the flowers and the petals are the emphasis, but the empty space around it is equally important. And in conversation, there are real pauses, you'll notice with Japanese colleagues and things, just more space and less emphasis on all content. So in the business world, we have really lost that balance of content and space to process that. So we put our meetings back to back to back to back with not a moment to reflect or even prepare oftentimes, or even to get present to what we're doing. So we can waste a lot of time kind of going around in circles. So to even just pause at the top of a meeting to consider, what is it we're here to accomplish and how will we know when we've done it? Maybe it's not a 60-minute meeting that makes that possible. Maybe it's a 12-minute meeting, or as a lot of people have figured out with these stand-up meetings.
Yeah.
So also with strategy, if you're really taking on a big piece of work and you want to come at it a different way, to maybe get out of the office and into a different frame of mind and not pack it with a full agenda, but give some space for people to have conversations and interact differently to then think their way forward, which is what I do as scientists and engineers. We go out into the woods to contemplate these really complex issues of toxic chemicals and how to remove them from our products. And we get out into a different space so we can think about this differently. The past has been like to drown ourselves in data and PowerPoints and, again, back-to-back meetings. And that's just not proving to be effective. That tends to create conventional thinking and not real innovation in a group.
Although I do think, I think when COVID hit, I think people were beginning to be even more open with what you're talking about. And I share many of the same philosophies as you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And now that people are coming back to the office, one of the things I'm seeing in some of the larger companies that I'm working with, and medium too, small too, actually, but is they're kind of going back to kind of what was versus, taking the lessons learned from what we've learned the last couple of years. And so how are you guiding people, or what are your suggestions for now that we're back in the office, now that we're hybrid, how do we kind of find the cadence of what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's a real opportunity for a redesign here. I'm so sad to hear you saying you're seeing us go back, because it really, I'm seeing a mixture of those, but I do worry about that. People kind of just going back to the same old, same old. I feel like many of us are actually a bit more heightened to the what was not working about that. So if there's a way to give voice to that, if it's a safe enough environment to raise those concerns. And I think some of us learned about how we really do work and think better. And again, so if self-advocacy or other advocacy, if we're in the position of power, if we can speak to that, because we want to make sure we're really hearing from some of the quieter voices on teams, that we're giving time for reflection, that our meetings are not just a tyranny of the fastest and the loudest, because again, that's just going to create conventional thinking. And most of us are not looking to just do for conventional thinking, at least what I'm working on anyway. Right. We're really wanting to do something different. We're really wanting to have novel breakthrough thinking, and that requires some spaciousness. So I think there's a piece in there about advocating for others and also noticing our own tendencies. Again, for that back-to-back scheduling, to default to the fastest and loudest and participate in that way. So leaders have a big opportunity here for redesign. And we think we're thinking about, our open office plans. And is it really all that we thought it would be in terms of that pollination of ideas? Or is the truth that we're just able to interrupt one another endlessly and keep all of our work shallow? So it's just, the truth is we can't keep being interrupted. Our attention is more like molasses than it is water.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you're talking about. Is, I think especially these next couple of years, and the next decade, mindfulness, reflective time, time to think, time to brainstorm, is going to be really, really important, because in order to grow and moving forward, I think I can't even say the next decade. I think just moving forward, leaders have to create a space for stillness and for silence, of mindfulness and reflection, to find the nuances. I see this in companies I coach,
Mm-hmm.
to find the nuances of what somebody who's just graduating college is finding a gap and starting a multi-billion dollar business, because they were going too fast, the company that had the lead, to find the glitch that somebody else is seeing. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I hope that we will see more of, what Google does. They have brainstorming time. They have time to just think and reflect and do a lot of the things that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This is great. This is
Yeah.
great. What would you, as far as a takeaway, what would you say to somebody who's listening to this, who is maybe can't get back to center, they can't find their flow state? What would you recommend they do? One thing that they can do to kind of find a time or a space to be more mindful and reflect? How did they get started as an individual and as a leader for their?
Yeah. Well, for the leaders, I mean, I would say one of the things we like to say with the chemists that I work with, is the motto, slow down, there isn't much time. Because the myth here is that, oh, there's this urgency, we need to speed up, but that often creates and kicks up a lot of noise. So the myth that if we slow down, or we find that stillness, or we take that reflective time, or that brainstorming time you're talking about with Google, that will rut somehow like we're wasting time or whatever. Well, those of you know, when you really clicked into something, when you get into that actual flow, then, and you've taken the time to do that, everything just falls into place, and it's so worth it. So slow down, there isn't much time is a beautiful motto for people who are trying to really connect to that flow and line things up. For individuals, I think one I love to say is that, if you find some interruption in your day, you're in a long line, your commute, something's happening with your commute, or whatever the case may be, to take that unstructured time, which so few of us have anymore, as just a moment to just pause, to not cram more in, to not reach for your phone and all these other things, to just consider that a little blessing, a little gift of silence, if you will.
Yeah.
And wherever you can, just to take a little moment for transitions, like say I'm opening a new document, just a breath, give yourself a moment to step outside, and to know those little healthy successors to the smoke break, if you will. We used to go take smoke breaks. I was one of those people. If you can make a little healthy successor to the smoke break, do it. Just bring in a little silence into your daily life.
Yeah, really, when I'm working with clients, I'm talking a lot about recalibrating, getting back to center, kind of regulating yourself and finding the rhythm, which is what you're saying, which I think is so important. All right, let's go into a quick speed round. Leigh, you ready?
Oh, I think so.
A book that's had a book or a TED Talk that's had the biggest impact on you.
Wow. Okay. Well, a main character in our book is Jarvis J. Masters. He's a friend who's on San Quentin's death row for a crime that preponderance of evidence suggests, and we certainly believe he didn't commit. So his book, That Bird Has My Wings, and Finding Freedom, those two books are amazing, amazing, beautiful books. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
Wow. So many. I think anything that orients me back to my actual felt experience. So the Buddha did that, wise people, and to use the body's intelligence as well as the mind's intelligence. Yeah.
Finish this sentence. One thing you can do right now to be more mindful is
Breathe.
Okay, good. I love it. Let's talk about a couple more things. I want to go back to the title of your book, Golden, the Power of Silence in a World of Noise. One thing you can do to find silence is?
Pause.
One thing you can do to understand where your loudest noises are coming from is to?
Get onto your own bad habits.
Okay. And how do people find their golden space?
Mm. Yeah, I think that's really through experimentation to really be true about what is actually bringing me quiet, noticing the signals that you're quietening, whatever those are for you, and noticing when you're saturated by noise, what are the signals of that? For me, like clenched jaw, tight diaphragm, shortness of breath, things like that. So really start to pay attention to the signals in your own body that you're experiencing noise, and also the opposite, silence.
Great. Leigh, this was great. Think Community, Leigh's book can be found on Amazon, on Audible, anywhere books are sold. Golden, The Power of Silence in a World of Noise, by Leigh Marz and her co-author, Justin Zorn. I appreciate you being on the show, Leigh, because I love talking to authors. I love talking about this topic. I love talking about mindfulness. I think it's so important to regulate ourselves. It's so important to, figure out how we can get back to center. We're all dealing with a lot, but how quickly we can get back to center is in many ways a differentiator. I'm a business coach. I work with successful people who are stuck. I get them unstuck. I love this podcast because I get to have guests on the show that also assist in my mission to help people get unstuck. You shared a lot. I just want to kind of extract a couple things, which is the importance of mindfulness and reflection, but also paying attention to our auditory information and internal noise, and creating a next step, no matter how small it is, to get to where we want to get to, which is getting rid of some of the noise and finding the answers in silence. Leigh, tell everybody where they can connect with you and learn more about the book, etc.
Yeah. Well, we're on LinkedIn. Both Justin and I are on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with you there. The book can be found on Amazon and anywhere you find books, independent booksellers. And we're also at AstreaStrategies.com, ASTREA strategies.com. And that's where we do our work, bridging contemplation and real world action.
I love it. Leigh, thanks so much for being on the show. Think Community, if Leigh can help you or her book, check it out. If I can help you, JonDwoskin.com. Leigh, this was great. All the best to you on your book and everything.
Thank you, John. That's great.
Thanks so much.